Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everyone. How's it going? Welcome to the show. It's Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday, which means we will be broadcasting live out at Scramblers. The Friday Road Show is sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air, so we'll be out there. I'd love for you to come out and join us. The doors do open at 6 o'clock, and you can have yourself breakfast or lunch. I'm a big lunch for breakfast kind of guy. I like, just like a big hamburger or something, or really should have got my throat prepped before it's open.
Boy.
Started doing the show.
Real hot train wreck over
I
there.
am a hot train wreck. It's just.
It's too much.
Stop it. Get it.
Let's try again tomorrow.
So much. Start tomorrow at Scramblers.
Scramblers does have really good hamburgers. That's my go-to.
Love a good hamburger. My mother-in-law loves cheeseburgers.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've never seen anyone love cheeseburgers like that woman. When she had, a few years ago, some sort of surgery. It wasn't anything massive, and I wasn't able to be there. And, it wasn't serious enough to where you're like, oh, I need to, take off work.
Yeah.
But obviously my wife went, and she said that when her mother woke up in the hospital after the procedure, the very first thing she did was ask for a cheeseburger.
Good for her.
She did. She's like, can I have a cheeseburger? She's like Wimpy from Popeye. Loves those cheeseburgers. Christy Folnecki is going to be joining us today. We'll also have Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. The legislative session in Missouri is wrapping up. I thought he hit a couple of the highlights for you here because it is important stuff. I know a lot of times it can get sort of like, in Missouri in particular, it's like, isn't this stuff that comes up like every legislative session, like every time that this stuff comes up, and sometimes that's the case, but not always. And there are meaningful things that do take place. And in terms of headlines, though, some of the more, I suppose one might say, controversial are things that are being, quote, undone by the legislators. I have no use for the hypocrisy of people who say, well, the people voted on this and they spoke, because we live in a state in which the people were asked 3 times whether or not they wanted gases or taxes raised at the pump. I know I always go back to this, but it's very important. And, 3 different times and 3 different times. And I'm not talking over 100 years. It was just over a few-year period. And people were like, no, we don't want it. And then they decided, well, we're going to do it anyhow. And they have the ability to do that. They went about and did it. Now, they were a little shady in circumventing the Constitution, spreading it over 5 years because they wanted to raise the price or the taxes so much at the pump that it violated the Constitution. So they had to spread it over a 5-year period. There's a Hancock Amendment that puts a limit on how much you can raise taxes on the people in Missouri, and Republicans running the state wanted to increase taxes more than that, and so they had to spread it out. That's why every year for 5 years we have tax increases at the pump. And, all of the editorials, all of them talked about how we needed this to be done, how it had to be done. And so when these same people, they're usually on the left, but not always, go off whining about how, well, the people spoke on this. Shut up. You have no credibility. That is not an argument that you can use. It absolutely is not an argument you can use. You are dishonest, you are hypocritical, and you have no credibility. And that's on you. Because you can't all high and mighty say it's wise for the legislature to stand up, and sometimes the people make a mistake. And the legislators, they need to come together and remedy that mistake, and that's what our system is set up for, until you don't like when they do it, and all of a sudden the will of the people's being overturned. It doesn't work that way. It might in your world of no ethics, but for many of us, it doesn't work that way. 2 of the areas in which lawmakers are looking to, in some capacity, change something that people voted on. It's got to do with the paid sick leave and abortion. And the state of Missouri voted to make Missouri the most pro-abortion state in the union, and not only that, but to essentially make it the Wild West of abortions in giving immunity to anyone who causes horrific damage or even kills a woman while performing an abortion. There is immunity in that. And people who claim that they support the health and safety of a mother supported that. So it was in Missouri, we really did vote in what would be considered worse than back alley abortions, because all of the regulation, everything gone. And I still contend the first time that some woman loses her life because of a botched abortion by someone who we are going to end up learning potentially has killed other women or left women permanently damaged. And then they find out, oh, they've got immunity because of that nice little amendment that was passed in Missouri. It'll be very interesting to hear how all the pro-abortion people react to that. I suspect they'll try to sweep it under the rug. Anyway, this is one of so Republicans are trying to remedy this so that we go back to where we're pro-life, but there are exemptions, for rape and incest, life of the mother, this sort of thing. When polled, most people say that they actually do support that approach, whether it's right or wrong. And so in reality, when people are surveyed consistently, what the Republican lawmakers are approving in terms of a referendum here is much more in line with what people say that they support than what has already been put in place. So this is a new referendum, by the way. This isn't something that the lawmakers are just going to snap their fingers and change, but this is calling for a referendum so that the people would get to choose. The other thing, Missouri lawmakers approving the repeal of the paid sick leave law. This is something that awaits the governor's signature. Proposition A in November of 2024 not only increased Missouri's minimum wage and required employers to give workers an hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked. And this was 58% of the vote. The financial burden for a number of the businesses, of course, is the arbitrary raising of what it is that they have to pay people for entry-level jobs. But what is even more damaging than that is the paid sick leave component. This is where a lot of businesses are very concerned and have grave concerns about the impact it's going to have, and why even some Democrats have been like, all right, well, maybe we can work with Republicans on hashing this out, because they are hearing from small business owners saying this is killing us. Missouri just really the lack of I don't want to get off on a tangent, but we are such a schizophrenic state. We run around talking about being a red state and showing the map and all the yet we pass these California-style propositions and amendments that in reality put us even further to the left than some of the bluest states when it comes to the fascistic approach of demanding government utilize its power to tell businesses how it is that they're going to be run, and abortion just for fun if one wants it. So these are two of the areas in which there's an attempt to remedy by lawmakers. There's been also this last push by Kehoe, and we're going to get to the news here. I just kind of wanted to update you on some of this stuff. And I don't know, Mike Landis may cover some of this. Kehoe had a proposal to fund new stadiums, and taxpayers would be kicking in on this. This is something that's been going on for some time. Your Royals are, part of this. Royals like,
yes.
We may go to Kansas, and so Kansas is like, hey, we'll give you all the, we'll have our taxpayers take care of whatever it is you want. If we get you over here, they'll still get charged out the wazoo to, come see a game perhaps and to buy a hot dog, but nonetheless. And so Kehoe is like, hey, we need to come up with something to try. But essentially, you've got, and I understand it, I get it. You'll have Royals, for example, like, hey, well, let's kind of, it's like the kid with divorced parents and trying to leverage one against the other for the better Christmas gift. And Kehoe had made some proposals, but this apparently has died in the Senate. I think one of the reasons that a lot of Republicans who might tend to be supportive of tax incentives to lure big businesses to the area to create jobs is, and this is my mindset, and I'm not like, I spent this past summer in Kansas City quite a bit. And the reason I was there was on the Kansas side of Kansas City. But you go back and forth, and you stay on the Missouri side. All of the entertainment stuff that I was doing was on the Missouri side, and I just in my mind, the stadium is clearly going to be. I think that there's an area picked up, but it's still going to be in the Kansas City area, and so I don't know. I don't see it as having some sort of massive. It's not like the St. Louis Rams moved out of state, and all of a sudden all of the people that used to come to the area aren't any longer. You're still going to have people coming to the area. I don't know. It just, to me, it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, honestly. And it's not like everyone says it's the Missouri Royals. It's Kansas City Royals. The name wouldn't change. I just don't think that really beyond psychologically that first year or two of the move, anyone would really feel any different. I don't think there would be that much of a difference that warrants making such a massive financial move on the part of the Missouri government on behalf of the taxpayers. And I think a lot of probably Missouri lawmakers feel the same way. So I don't know. I could be wrong. Again, I'm not a huge. Does it matter to you? You're a big Royals fan.
I don't really care
Yeah.
either
See,
way.
I think that's. I think if it were Royals are going to move to Anaheim or something, that would be a different situation. It's like essentially moving across the street. Like, okay, whatever. And I know that there are some tax revenue implications and so forth, but I'm talking about the impact on the average person. Put it this way: people who love to go to Royal games, see the Royals, like Sarah, for example. I think that overall it's gonna be like, I don't care, whatever. All right, weather coming up in a moment. Also, we've been talking about, for some time, and I know a lot of people don't like this, but that when it comes to fiscal issues, Josh Hawley is as big government as Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders. And he has gone to the New York Times in order to plead his case to not cut out fraud and waste out of Medicaid because Republicans might lose elections over it. He was over on CNN last night. Isn't it interesting that he's going to all of these different venues that love to have Republicans that torpedo any meaningful reform? Anytime a Republican becomes a darling of CNN and the New York Times, that's a red flag. Well, fortunately, just in terms of education, it's not going unnoticed, and I wanted to play audio from some national shows that are like, what on earth is going on with this guy? And it's regarding Josh Hawley. So we've got that coming up, and then also there is this viral posting about a Cuban restaurant in Springfield that's shutting down because of the immigration policies of Donald Trump. So we'll talk about that also. We'll have a little bit of education going on. Now the latest news.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies. It'll also be a breezy one. We'll see a high near 87. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 59. For your Friday, a slight chance for scattered showers in the afternoon. Otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 85. And looking ahead to Saturday, sunny with a high near 82.
Hey, tomorrow's going to be Food Truck Friday at Pinnaker Honda. Great day there on South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn, to check out some of their incredible deals, including the new 2025 Honda HR-V for only $299 a month. And that is not a lease. That's yours. You got it. You own it, baby. New CRV, $398 a month, also not a lease, plus 0.99% APR available on certified pre-owned vehicles. And right now they got free fuel for summer with every new car purchase. So a lot of great deals. And like I said, sometimes, the time that works best for you, that's most convenient, is during a lunch break, but you also got to get lunch. Well, Friday, a great day with different food trucks for that Food Truck Friday at none other than Pinnaker Honda, South Campbell. All right, I'm going to play a little bit of audio. Now, I have long. I'm not a team player in the sense that if there are people who run as being fiscally conservative, but then when they get in there, they do an about face that say, okay, well, I'll just follow. See, I feel like that's kind of what Democrats do. That they get hoodwinked, and then you know it, and when you go, why is it that they keep voting for these people over and over again? There's that whole walk away movement that a number of Democrats have long held, particularly minorities, or that, I shouldn't say long held, but the last couple of years, that they're like, you know what, enough. I'm tired of being lied to. You're always telling me that you're this, and you get elected, and you're that, and I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not saying I'm going to the other side. I'm not switching, but I'm walking away. I'm done subsidizing your dishonesty. And sometimes that means it's just it is what it is. Now, when it comes to a number of different issues, social issues in particular, Josh Hawley's conservative. And again, I think that he serves the Senate, he serves Missouri, and he serves the country and the truth very well when it comes to his questioning of a lot of witnesses that really need to be exposed before the American people. Now, some not so much. He loves to go after businesses and rail on businesses because of profits. I don't like the Bernie Sanders stuff that he does, but when it comes to people in government, oftentimes that need to be exposed, he's very, very good at that. But he's not fiscally conservative. He's just not. And he has been able to get away with this. And it's something that I just at times feel like I'm this lone voice in the wilderness on the truth on this thing. But it is starting to pick up. Now, what he's done is he's starting to get noticed on a larger scale because he is becoming a darling of the New York Times and CNN. He's popping up there arguing against fiscal responsibility and using Democrat talking points, claiming that Republicans are going to steal Medicaid away from little kids. And his op-ed piece or his, what do they call it, guest, it wasn't editorial, but column, I think, guest columnist. He was a guest of the New York Times. And at just the, I got a call from a mother of 4 whose 8-year-old's on a feeding tube. And, Donald Trump's going to come personally pull it out and then beat the child with it until it's dead. That sort of stuff. It's like, come on. This playbook is so played out. But the real problem with it is it gives Democrats a weapon to falsely accuse Republicans of what they've been falsely accusing Republicans for years of, and that is going to steal away much-needed benefits for the most vulnerable amongst us. I think that's the biggest problem I have. It isn't even so much. There's, yes, the dishonesty about being fiscally responsible but then not being, but to willingly make yourself a weapon against the voters who want fiscal responsibility. Because what he's doing, whether he intends to or not, he is giving ammunition. If, like you, for example, you're a supporter of Doge, you're fine with having programs that are there to help the most vulnerable, but you recognize that there are people who shouldn't be on it. He is giving ammunition to people who want to falsely accuse you of wanting to kick people off of Medicaid that need it desperately. He's doing that to you. Dana Lash yesterday talking about a number of different Republicans that are the reason so many Republican voters say, what's the point any longer? And here she is yesterday on her show.
And then when it comes down to it, oh my gosh, when you talk about going and looking at Medicare or stopping any kind of waste, fraud, and abuse, or whatever it is. They lose their minds. Like, you have 3 Republicans right now in the House that are not going to consider any spending bill that defunds Planned Parenthood. Michael Oliver is one of them. That's crazy. You have others that are like, no, we're not going to touch Medicare. We're not going to touch any of that. We have to, Josh Hawley from Missouri is like, no, we got to have something for the working poor. I thought you wanted austerity. I thought you wanted to cut spending. I thought you wanted to get away from the entitlement welfare structure that the system has morphed into. This mission creep. Everybody always talks a really good game, but when it comes down to it, they're too scared to do anything about it.
Sometimes it's not fear. Sometimes it's who they really are. Now, she said Medicare. She meant Medicaid. Earlier this morning, Red Eye Radio having a discussion. And again, by the way, these are not positives for Missouri, that we have an elected official that keeps popping up as the problem to meaningful changes. That's not good for the state of Missouri. We had that for a long time with Claire McCaskill. You know, she kept popping up in the news. You'd hear all these national shows talking about Claire McCaskill. This is beginning to happen with Josh Hawley. Here are the guys on Red Eye.
Don't care. No, they don't. We're not seeing that outrage. If we did, those representatives would be up there too. Well, I mean, you've got Josh Hawley saying he's not going to vote for the bill. Why? It cuts Medicaid too much. Right. He's really turning into a big fiscal socialist, is he not? Yeah. Seriously. Yeah. He may be a cultural conservative, but he's turning into a fiscal socialist. Right. Because what he's saying is, no, we can't be cutting Medicaid. Right. So you're telling me the bill and how much it's increased since 2019 is a good thing? And Josh Hawley is one of those people that people perceive as being a conservative, and he may be on the cultural issues. He certainly is not on fiscal issues. He doesn't give a damn about the debt that we're putting on future generations. No, he doesn't.
Now, it's important to understand that what we're talking about whenever this need, and Congressman Burleson has been explaining this for a very long time, as have other fiscal conservatives. And I shouldn't even have to say fiscal conservatives. This is what Republicans all claim as a platform that they support. And that is simply talking about specifically during the Obama years, where they just massively expanded the welfare state by way of Medicaid by saying, instead of just the poor and the vulnerable, but even you got some 28-year-old loser guy who's perfectly able-bodied and just doesn't want to work and refuses to and lives in his parents' basement and they can't get him out, that you and I as taxpayers, we have to cover him for Medicaid as well. And it was this massive expansion. And this is just talking about, let's just kind of go back to before that happened. And that's what Josh Hawley's railing against. And that's why the New York Times and CNN, he has become a darling of those outlets now. And that's why, sadly and unfortunately, he is becoming synonymous when you hear these discussions coming up on national shows and elsewhere with part of the problem. He's like the new John McCain or Mitt Romney or Susan Murkowski or Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski. This is not good for Missouri. Now, at the same time, I'm very realistic. He's going to be a U.S. Senator as long as he wants to be. He's got name recognition. The party's going to be behind him. I'm not foolish in this capacity. I get it. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't know what, the truth is and who it is that right now, you think about it, it's not the Democrats. It is not the Democrats that are endangering this country when it comes to whether or not we, at this one moment in time, fix these problems. Republicans are in charge. The question is, will people like Josh Hawley derail it? Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. coming up, going viral. The tragic outrage. A Cuban restaurant on Commercial Street going out of business because of Donald Trump's immigration policies. Now, I'll give you just a little preview. Nowhere in the article does it actually explain how this is happening, like what exactly about the immigration policies is causing this to occur. Now, there's some claims that are made, but this is shockingly lacking in any sort of detail that gives the reader any sense of what is actually going on. So we'll have that coming up next. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447 KSGF.
Field's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies. It'll also be a breezy one with a high near 87. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 59. For your Friday, we'll see a slight chance for scattered showers in the afternoon, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 85. And looking ahead to Saturday, sunny with a high near 82.
All right, locally anyhow, going viral, though it will not surprise me. There's a chance this is a sort of story that could go national, and it's a Cuban restaurant on C Street here in Springfield that is closing because of the immigration policies of Donald Trump. All right, and let me read the news leader story here. Headline, quote, "These policies are forcing us to close. Springfield Cuban restaurant closing." La Habana Viejo, a Cuban restaurant on Commercial Street, announced that it will close after dinner service on May 14th. The restaurant's Cuban staff is losing the ability to work in the United States due to President Donald Trump's policies on immigration, including work visas. According to co-owner Freddie Flores, about half of La Habana Viejo's bar staff and 80% of the kitchen staff are Cuban immigrants. Quote, they came here with work permits. They waited until they were legally allowed here. They did not enter the United States illegally, end quote. Flores declined to add anything else, saying that the statement posted online was carefully considered. Quote, I thought long and hard about the way to say without implicating my political views and political decisions or anything like that. Unfortunately, these policies are forcing us to close. We will not be able to operate after today. The statement, which was dated May 13th, was posted online the morning of May 14th, and it read as follows. Dear valued friends and customers, the management has worked hard to bring Springfield a Cuban restaurant staffed with Cuban people. The kitchen and bar were staffed primarily with Cuban workers, with Cubans working hard to secure their part of the, quote, American dream. However, in recent days, our government has elected to rescind their ability to work, thus forcing their departure from La Habana Viejo and the United States. Wednesday, the 14th of May, 2025, is the last day they can work. We're closing the doors at La Habana Viejo following the Wednesday evening meal. We will miss your support of this restaurant. Sincerely, the management, Ted Tabor, Fred Flores, and Hope Chowdy. Then it gives the address, and then it talks about immigration policies and MSU students, something that's not really related, other than it's an immigration issue. Now, there's a couple of two primary aspects to this. One, the story itself, and two, the reaction to it. I'm sure most of you can imagine, because it's social media, the reaction to this. Now, a lot of it are just these little sad face emojis. And a lot of these, I'm so sorry to hear this, a lot of people taking this as an opportunity to rip the administration and to essentially describe an America in which some of our greatest cultural assets are being ripped away from us because of Donald Trump's immigration policies. Now, again, I'm just a curious person, and as usual, I find that people who craft stories that are supposed to be providing me with a full picture of what's going on, I end up with more questions than answers. I'm like, how are you not addressing this or asking this? Or there's so much missing here. Perhaps the biggest one, which is written in the news leader as a fact, that the restaurant staff is losing the ability to work in the United States because of Trump's policies on immigration, including work visas. Now, my very first question is, well, what part of the policy and what was the visa situation that the policy changes caused these individuals to suddenly no longer be able to work in the United States? I mean, that just seems like a no-brainer question. Now, if there was a situation in this country in which the president was like, guess what? Visas, work visas, all work visas are no longer valid. That everyone has to go home. We would know the answer to that, right? But the problem is there are tens of thousands of people across this country that currently have work visas and that are continuing to utilize their work visas. And so this clearly, if this is an accurate portrayal of the situation, is much different than what other people in this country, including this very community, are dealing with when it comes to work visas. So, again, totally natural question, and I didn't go to journalism school. Apparently, they teach you how to not ask obvious questions, because it's like, okay, well, why is it that these changes, and Trump has made a lot of changes. There's no doubt about that. There have been changes that are made. They're not and it's not resulting in everyone with a work visa having to go back to their home country. So what is different about these people? Why is that such a difficult question to ask? Why is that such a difficult question just to ask oneself? Now, I don't know that, the person, again, I just think that as we get to younger and younger generation, that the university systems have taught people how not to think. And so I don't know that this is a political bias situation as much as just that never even crossed, the mind of the person who wrote the story. Like, oh, I never really thought of that. I suspect that that's probably the case. But I'd like to know the answer to that, particularly given that this is something that is impacting the community, and it's a community story. That what is the answer there? I don't know the answer. But obviously, one of two things is occurring here. Either we are all, with what limited information is being provided, inferring something different than what is, than what's actually going on, or this is a situation that's different than other people on work visas are going through, but we don't know why. Now, that being said, there seems to be a misunderstanding about what a visa is in this, like a work visa, and the fact that most of them are temporary. There is this attitude a lot of people have that if you're from this country, you better abide by every government mandate. You have to abide by your permits. You have to abide, especially when it comes to restaurants. The city of Springfield, how many businesses get held up. We talk about this all the time, month after month after month because of a permit, or they're not able to renew a permit because of this, particularly when it comes to alcohol. This is a big holdup, the threat of withholding permits for alcohol. You got to go through your permit renewal. And there is this expectation that, well, that's part of doing business. But for whatever reason, when it comes to people who aren't citizens of this country and any sort of licensing or permitting, whenever they are required to comply with it, we all just get up in arms about it. Like, well, I shouldn't have to do that. It's this weird disconnect. Now, again, permits, and we don't know what sort of permit. That information's not provided. There are numerous types of permits. A great deal, particularly if you're talking about unskilled workers, that are temporary permits. And those require reapplying, sort of like with your driver's license. You have to reapply, or a number of different permits people may get for buildings or whatever. This is the way our government works. And people who are in this country working on a visa permit are, I know this is crazy, held to the same standard. That if there is an application, there's a permit, there is a renewal time on it, that you have to do that. And if you don't, then you do not get to continue to work here. Well, but we don't know that's the case. Yeah, we don't know, because once again, information that's lacking. We know nothing about what's actually going on here. And that is because of the posting made by the restaurant owner, but in addition to that, the amplification of it by the news leader. And if the news leader did ask these questions, but they weren't answered, then I think that should be part of the story. Hey, we inquired, like, exactly what changes have made this impact. Real, what was it about the new administration? You say that the government has elected to rescind their ability to work. How did they do that? What happened? Was it a specific visa situation? What was their visa situation? Because what it makes it sound like, and this could be the case, don't know, that they were perfectly fine, that their visas were great, their visas weren't about to expire, and then all of a sudden they were told, oh, you know what? You don't have your visas anymore. Now, that is clearly what people infer occurred, but we don't know that that's the case. I got to take a traffic update, a couple other aspects about this, including the reaction and what it is for all of the thematic reaction that people are having on social media about this. There's one theme that's completely missing, but is pretty consistent, particularly for people on the left. All right, on this news story that's based off of a social media posting from the Cuban restaurant in C Street in Springfield, claiming that they have no choice but to close because of Trump's immigration policies, making it not possible for what the owner claims are people legally working in this country to work here any longer. But there's no explanation as to why that is. There's no explanation in the posting and the news leader in their story. There's no questioning of that whatsoever. So, as usual, what happens is you have allegations made, you have inferences being taken, and the inference that clearly a lot of people have is that these are people that were here completely legally, working legally, that their visas were all good, nothing was wrong at all, and there was some change made that ripped that from them. And like I said, maybe there was a change made that somehow retroactively took from them their work visas, but we don't know because none of that information is provided. One of the text messages, Trump's, quote, policies support law, so they've overstayed their visa, or what part of the law are they violating? They're essentially illegal aliens, and right? Well, again, we don't know the answer to that because no information is provided. Now, not that this necessarily goes to the heart of it, but a lot of people on social media are going on and on about how horrible that it is that this is causing the restaurant to close. No. You could hire other people. There are, you know how many restaurants, including Mexican restaurants in Springfield? There are, and not just Mexican restaurants, but restaurants C Street itself. There are a tremendous number of restaurants that are based on the cultures of other countries that are continuing to stay open. So why is this one different? Now, if the answer is the whole point of the restaurant was to make sure that it was staffed with people from Cuba that are here on work visas, okay, but that's a choice. That is a choice being made by the restaurant owner. So I don't buy the idea that the only reason that there's no way that this restaurant can stay open because of the immigration policies of Trump. That's just not realistically true. And in that same vein of the people that are outraged because of government policies that are causing, that they believe are causing this restaurant to close, where have you been? I mean, Springfield in particular, just the hassle businesses have with permits and having to comply with government mandates and regulations, not to mention COVID. You know how many businesses shut down because of what turned out to be totally BS, pulled out of thin air rules about you got to be this many feet apart. You can't have this many things on the shelves. And people are just like, oh, there'd be a news story about it. Well, closed because of COVID. And people are like, oh, well. But for whatever reason, all of a sudden, these people care. Which leads me to another point, and that is, how much do they really care? I read through all of the comments. Oh, some went on and on. I mean, on and on, just about, how horrible this is, how their heart breaks for these people. But do you know what was lacking? What's lacking is any one of these people talking about, hey, maybe we can all get together and help these people apply for citizenship. I don't know if you know this or not, but you can go to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and there's an application link right there. Well, but that's really hard. Oh, okay. I love all of these people that act like this. In fact, there was one of the postings on social media was a woman wearing a unicorn hat talking about how, don't you worry, I'm out there fighting every day in order to try to make sure things like this don't happen. Oh, really? Have you reached out to see if there's anything you can do to help these people become actual U.S. citizens? That's something that's still happening. In fact, even all of the people that are in this country illegally, the Trump administration has made very clearly, even on that handy-dandy app that was developed by the Biden administration, that if you voluntarily leave, not only will you get $1,000, but you can come back legally at some point. And we'll pay for your transportation. We'll give you $1,000 stipend. There's a question. Is this part of that? Is this something where these individuals have decided, you know what, that seems like a pretty good deal, let's do that? Again, don't know, because that information is not provided. Just so you know, it's not a Trump thing, I pulled numbers of people from other countries who came to the country legally and went through the process and became actual naturalized citizens. In 2016, these are the Trump years, 753,000 people from other countries became U.S. citizens. 2017, 707 plus thousand. 2018, 761 plus thousand. 2019, 843 plus thousand. Stayed consistent, actually a little higher than some of the years from the Obama years. So we also need to continue, or for some people, stop rejecting this idea that there's no way to come to this country as a U.S. citizen or to apply for U.S. citizenship. But what I find is when you bring it up, the people who go on and on about how they would do absolutely anything to be U.S., to be here, they would do anything. They've given up so much. But when you talk about a process that may be a little bit burdensome all of a sudden, well, not that much. All of the comments, all of the people outraged, I didn't see a single one that was like, hey, maybe we can all get together and help guide these people through the naturalization process, or at least see if it's possible. Because it's much, much, much easier to be outraged on Facebook than to actually do something to help people, isn't it? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. All right, everyone. We got Chrissy Fulnecki in the upcoming hour. We'll also have Author of the Week in the 8 o'clock hour, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. I'm Nick Reed.
Agreements in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, where he addressed American troops today.
Qatar will also be investing $10 billion to support this massive base in the coming years, and there's no place like it, they say.
This is the Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East, hosting more than 10,000 American troops.
President Zelensky arrived after challenging Putin to meet with him there. Donald Trump said he was not surprised that Putin was a no-show. Israel's military continues to pound targets in the Gaza Strip.
Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 54 Palestinians overnight in a southern Gaza city, a day after Israeli airstrikes killed at least 70 people throughout Gaza. The southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis was bombarded overnight by Israeli missiles. It was the second heavy night of bombing.
Correspondent Karen Chamas. Walmart's chief financial officer says price hikes from tariffs could start later this month. John Rainey tells CNBC tariffs are still too high, even with this week's agreement to lower import taxes from China to 30% for the next 90 days. NATO foreign ministers are debating a U.S. demand to massively ramp up defense investment to 5% of GDP over the next few years. At talks going on in Turkey today, NATO Secretary General said more funds and military equipment are needed. More on these stories at townhall.com.
If you're living with pain, see how Relief Factor can help.
My back got injured very bad. I was off work for about a year. I heard about Relief Factor from my wife. I took it every day, 3 times a day for 3 weeks. Look at her and I said, the pain is gone. And she said, I'm glad it helped. I said, no, you don't understand. It's gone.
Fight pain naturally with Relief Factor. Go to relieffactor.com and get your 3-week quick start today. Only $19.95.
Why'd I go to the doctor? One day at the firehouse, I was so lightheaded I could barely stand. Even my crew noticed. Getting checked out was the right call. Turns out I have atrial fibrillation, which increases the risk of stroke about 5 times.
Symptoms like irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness can come and go. But if it's AFib, the risk of stroke remains. If you have symptoms, contact a doctor.
I'm so glad I did.
Visit notimetowait.com, sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
House Republicans say they're making progress in approving
I want a great homeloan.com. You know where you go if you want a great home loan? You go to iwantagreathomeloan.com. It's that simple. The site itself, actually, if you go, you'll find a lot of valuable information there that can be helpful in your quest for that great home loan. It's not simply like the site where you open it up and, okay, what's your name, social security number, birth date, and then somebody gets back with you. There is, of course, that process to get the home loan process or the refinance process or the reverse mortgage process started if you'd like. But there is a lot of really great additional information there as well. It's one of the things that they do to make it easier for everyone is to really prep you ahead of time on things not to do. A lot of places don't do that. All right, well, we got your home loan, you're approved and everything. Let us know when you find a house. And then in the meantime, Aunt Bertha dies and leaves you $10,000, and you think, oh, I'll put this in my checking account. It just means I have more money. That's helpful, right? No, that's a red flag in the eyes of regulators and whomever else. And so all of a sudden, that can throw a huge wrench into things. They are there to help as best as possible to make sure that you are aware of the things not to do in order to make things go havoc. And if they do, then they're there to help guide you through that as well. And it all starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. Chrissy Fulnecki's here, everyone.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Gotta fix a few things over here.
Yeah, you got her all set?
Yeah, that's
got
right.
her all straightened out, do you?
I know.
Do you guys remember when the election last year was going on? And it was...
Yes, we do.
It was... Okay, good. All right, we're there, okay. Level 1. And there were two things in particular that they really tried to do character harm, I guess, if you will, to J.D. Vance. One of them was the cat lady thing. Remember that, right?
Oh, yeah, right.
Do you remember the other thing? And then they tried to be like, oh, he's weird. These guys are weird. But do you remember there was another thing about him that there was a few days where they were talking about it was problematic?
With Vance?
Yeah, with J.D. Vance.
All I can think of is when they were making fun of him because he looked like he wore eyeliner.
Well, okay, so it was the beard thing. Remember that?
Yes, okay.
How there was this whole, it was maybe, I don't know if it was a full week.
And it's intimidating.
Yes, it was intimidating, and this.
Okay, I don't remember that.
Oh, you don't remember that?
No.
It was essentially what they're like trying to do is to tell people here's another reason you shouldn't like them. That's what they were constantly doing that. And so this beard thing, how it was intimidating and all, and so forth. So anyhow, these things stick in my mind, and it popped back up in my mind because I'm looking at a story of Pete Buttigieg out in Iowa.
Oh, are you serious?
And what's he got on his face?
Yes. It looks very
Pete
awkward.
Buttigieg is wearing a beard. Now, isn't that something? I'm telling you, it is hilarious to watch these Democrats. It's clear they have realized that they have a problem projecting masculinity.
Yeah.
And they know it.
That's one of their many problems.
Well, and they knew that they had a problem with men going into the election. So that's why they tried to tell us that Tim Walz was the definition of masculinity.
Yeah.
And then they started running around saying, MAGA Americans, they're intimidated by masculinity by Tim Walz. And we're like, what are you doing?
That's right.
You got David Hogg, who looks like, that guy is the antithesis of masculinity. He's out there talking about how we need masculinity. So they all get it. The problem is they don't have it.
Yeah, I know, right?
They don't have it. In addition to the fact that they've trashed it for years, they coined this term toxic masculinity and have spent years talking about how masculinity is bad, how it's toxic, we need to move away from traditional masculinity because it's been toxic. Well, they realize that that's not working for them. So now they're trying to make up the ground, and they're doing what they always do. And I swear this Pete Buttigieg beard thing is just part of it, is they look at, okay, the people that are successful what are they doing? Let's just mimic
Yeah,
that.
right.
Like we've talked about the podcast thing.
Yeah, right.
They're like, well, we'll just do a podcast because that worked for Trump, not understanding why the podcast thing worked for Trump. Well, they're masculine. They made fun of J.D. Vance because of the beard, and so now, all of a sudden, here Pete Buttigieg is in Iowa, and look, he's got a beard all of a sudden. Well, I guess that means he's a man.
Yeah. I mean, and plus, it wouldn't be so bad, except it was literally like 6 months that you guys were railing on for this example, people with beards. So literally you made men mad, you made their spouses mad, you made all of these people mad, and it's only been a few months. So, I mean, they're just so not authentic.
I was trying to
And I'm telling you, Buttigieg needs more help than a beard. I mean, that guy, he is probably one of the most incompetent Democrats on the face of the earth.
Well, look at who the Democrats have, honestly. Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
Look at what he's done to California.
A weird thing with his hands. Like, I mean, I don't know what. It's like he's doing a disco dance.
It is so weird.
That's so distracting. He can't be president because of that.
Man, I must not have saved it. Did you
look how low the bar is for the Democrats from Biden?
I know.
You can only go up from there, okay?
Did you maybe during the break, Sarah can find this audio. Did you guys see? I think it was last what Trump said about Pete Buttigieg.
No, huh?
All right, we have got to find that audio and play it. I'll off air. I'll give you more details about what he's talking about. It should not be difficult to find, but I thought I recorded it and saved it, but I can't find it in my database over here. Christy Fulnecki is with us. Weather in a moment. Now the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. It'll be partly sunny and breezy today with a high near 87. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 59. For your Friday, we'll see a slight chance for scattered showers in the afternoon. Otherwise, mostly sunny with a high near 85. And looking ahead to Saturday, sunny skies with a high near 82.
Chrissy Fulneck, you have your helicopter
Yes.
pad yet?
No.
Well,
No, we're working on the plan, so.
You don't even have to work on the plant. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, they do the plans for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what they
And they
do the
specialize in
designing, the
helicopter
planning.
pads?
Well, they custom design. So I
Oh.
don't know that they specialize in anything and everything. So they can have your helicopter pad and then nice lighting. Then they can incorporate sound into it. So as you're walking, whatever your theme song is, yeah, you can have nice little fire pit built in there.
Song.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, Kiki Comanche. You're gonna have that playing as you walk your home. But yeah, so whether it's that or just standard patio stuff, whatever it may be, landscaping, outdoor lighting, paper retaining walls. Yeah.
Helicopter pad, so we know where
Yes, trust me, I know their work. They can easily do that.
That's great.
All right, HunterHardscapes.com, also KSGF.com, Nick's endorsement. Pete Buttigieg is in Iowa, and he is donning a beard because Democrats are trying to play masculine now. And so I really hope that this becomes something that they try to outdo each other on. Like Gavin Newsom's going to start chewing tobacco and spitting in a spittoon. And they're like going to Google, what does a real man look like? They're going to just start walking this way. And
A cowboy.
yeah, and they'll all be like, did you know that jazz hands are not manly? Like that Tim Waltz had us all very thrown off track.
Yes.
All right, so anyway, we're talking about Pete Buttigieg, and yesterday, I think this was last week, Trump is signing executive orders, and this was around the time that, so maybe it was a week prior, but that there was discussion about flight control, because there was that 90-second outage and needing upgrades, and Pete Buttigieg, who for 4 years did nothing to upgrade it, somehow is out there criticizing the Trump administration for this. And anyway, Trump talked about Buttigieg in that context.
Before we had the rigged election, to give out a brand new gorgeous system to one company that was going to do the whole thing, one of the best companies in the world that you know very well. You know, there are 3 or 4 of them that do it. A bicycle with his, in all fairness, with his husband on the back, which is a nice, loving relationship. But he didn't have a clue. This guy didn't have a clue. And he's actually a contender for president. Between him and Crockett, you can have that party. But
I didn't get that.
Between him and Crockett.
I think that is so, because the way his mind works, talking about the fact that, and they got like 1 point whatever trillion dollars for transportation purposes, and Buttigieg directed none of it to update the from copper to fiber optics, so this sort of thing wouldn't happen. And then he's just like, this is a guy who rides his bicycle, and now to his credit, his husband rides on the back. That's a very nice thing.
Trump is so funny. In a few words, he can summarize someone's whole personality very quickly.
Yeah.
But what is Pete gonna run on? I mean, literally, do you remember how many actual train wrecks happened when he was the head of transportation? I mean, it was a disaster all the time. And then he wouldn't go to where the disaster was.
You look at
Amtrak. Yeah, remember everything that happened with that?
It really is the party of equity in this sense, that the left shifted away from equality to equity, because equality was something that we all recognize, that you had equality of opportunity, but that didn't mean that there would be equitable outcome, because people have different skills. Some people are going to be great at math and some people aren't. So the outcome, that equitable outcome that everyone's going to end up the same, is in defiance of reality. Some people are good singers, some people are good dancers, some people are attractive, some people aren't. And that idea of equity is that none of that stuff should matter. I mean, they have preached that meritocracy is racist. This is part of CRT, DEI, that if you believe you should earn a position based off of your skills and your background and the proof that you are capable, that is part of this, this patriarchy that is, white supremacy and so forth. Well, they really do live by it, because you look at these people and they've not done anything. Like you said, what has Buttigieg ever done? It's like, well, he was transportation secretary. First off, he wasn't good at it, and he was just given that position. It wasn't something he earned. He was given that position.
Missing for long periods of time.
Oh,
There would be major disasters, and we were like, where is he?
He and his hubby were out riding that bike together. But Kamala Harris is another example. Her first job in politics was because she was a side piece of Mayor Willie Brown. I mean, he's acknowledged that.
Yeah.
That he got her that position. And then, of course, she's a Democrat. So in California, everything gets handed to her from there. The first, what would be a real race that she actually would have to win on her own merits was for president in 2016. She couldn't even make it to the first primary. There's no other choice. Biden said, I'm going to pick a woman of color. What other options were there? Yeah. So that position, and that was a train wreck. And then, of course, ran for president. That was so they take these people. Beto O'Rourke is another example. Yeah, remember for a while, he was the hot thing. The Democrat, oh, this guy's great. Like, what has he done? Nothing. Hillary Clinton. This became viral for a while when she was running for president, that people would go to her supporters at rallies. Can you name one thing that she's done that her own supporters couldn't say anything that she did?
It's going to be it's so hard for them to talk about what they're for. Like they got so much so deep into DEI stuff that they can't even articulate what their party is for. Well, they couldn't even really do it.
Why they're for it even. Yeah. That's the thing. They can't explain it.
It's anyone, JD Vance or any of these guys. And I mean, they're not going to have a chance if they can't talk about exactly what, I say that, but they're going to have such a track record after what's going on with Trump that it's going to be hard for them to be competitive if they're not going to talk about what they've done.
But Pete Buttigieg is a real man now because he has a beard.
You see superficial qualities, which to me it's so condescending because it's like you people
it's embarrassing.
Well, and it's saying, okay, you are an idiot because you believe me that 6 months ago I was making fun of you guys, and now I'm trying to become one of you. I mean, nobody's going to believe that except for the crazy Democrats and.
They'll do it. I honestly don't even know. And I mean, at this point, why even hold a presidential primary if you're the Democrat Party? Save the money.
Yeah.
Just tell the people, this is who you're going to support. That's what they did last time. Yeah. So why go through the charade of? I would genuinely, if I were in leadership of the DNC, say, let's just do this. And there'll be a huge backlash that we're not, we don't believe in democracy. But not with their supporters, you won't.
No, and
they will not. They will do whatever you tell them to do.
Yeah, and all the reasonable people are out of the party anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
you think about the money that they could save and then put it all into a general election. Just tell their voters, this is the person you're going to be excited about. They did it last time, and their voters were pretty much now, there were some that said they were a little offended by the fact that they had their vote overturned, but they'll comply when it comes down to
that. Just went through the cycle of kicking Biden out and putting Harris in there. You'd think that would outrage them right there. So anyone that did not leave the party after that whole charade, they're going to put up with anything.
I'm trying to think who else. And see, you think, okay, Shapiro, but he's Jewish. There's no way.
No, that's not happening on your watch. No,
that the Democrat Party is going to even entertain nominating a Jewish person.
Yeah, and I remember when she was going to pick her VP, and I thought that's not going to be good for us if they pick him.
Well, that's very competitive. It was the no-brainer.
Yeah. I mean, he would have been very competitive.
It was believed he'd deliver Pennsylvania. He was considered to be much more moderate, and he is compared to where the party's gone.
He doesn't look like a whack job,
but he's Jewish.
The rest of them. Yeah.
I mean, and when your party's anti-Semitic, you can't really have a Jew.
Well, it's funny to think, not funny, but that you're trying to talk about like the least crazy person in the Democratic Party that you could have run for something.
And the one that is least crazy, but he's a Jew. I mean, you just think this is the process that Democrats have to go through.
Well, so to my point about all the crazies, all the moderates getting out of the party, Kennedy yesterday, I think it was yesterday, when he was testifying, he was calling out all the Democrats, and he said, you've been talking about getting food dyes out of, for 20 years, and here I did it in 100 days. Yeah. And then he said, let's all work together for the betterment of the kids. And I thought, well, that's great. That's common sense.
Well, it's not unlike how long? Well, 4 years they claim they were trying to fix the border, and it took Trump it took him like 2 weeks. I mean, how incompetent! Just the results demonstrate the Democrats are, or I mean, there's a question: were they incompetent, or I mean, let's be honest. Let's be honest. Much like the border situation, that for RFK Jr. to point out, and he may have elaborated on this, it isn't incompetence that Democrats, when they were in charge, didn't do this. It's because of big donations coming from these corporations that don't want to have to remove that stuff. Now, whether one agrees that that should be the government's position or not, it's because Democrats are bought and paid for by these giant corporations. And I'm not saying there aren't Republicans that aren't as well, but the Democrats as a party entirely they are.
Yeah. So if you look at one issue, removing food dye, dyes from the food. So anyone could figure out how to do that. Okay. I mean, just practically. So why haven't they done it?
Well, they said, because
school group could get together and solve this problem. It's not.
Well, and like I said, I think there is an absolute valid, legitimate argument to say, hey, that should be free. As long as people know it's in there and they know the dangers, then companies should be allowed to put it in there. But the point is that Democrats, and what RFK Jr. is talking about, that they've been saying we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And he's like, it wasn't that hard. So point being is they didn't really want it. They didn't care. It's just like everything else with them. And this is why there was that walk away movement. A lot of people that weren't Republicans, ideologically speaking, but they're like, why do the Democrats keep telling us they're going to do this stuff and they don't do it? Or they tell us, hey, let us do this, like Obamacare. But what they tell us is going to result is the opposite of what actually happens. Yeah. And so they get screwed either which way.
I don't think they want to solve any problems. Like, frankly, I don't think they know how to solve problems. And I don't think they want to, because they would have solved a lot. I mean,
but Pete Buttigieg is a man because he's got a beard now. Christy Fulnecki with us. We got a quick break, traffic as well. Continue on. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Traffic update, then more with Christy Fulnecki.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 87. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 59. For your Friday, we'll see a slight chance for scattered showers in the morning, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 85. And looking ahead to Saturday, sunny with a high near 82.
Christy Folnecki
Yes.
is here with
I'm
us.
here.
Yes.
I can't believe I've been on here so long. I'm thinking that's
I know we were
crazy.
just having the conversation. It's been a long time.
10 years.
Over 10 years.
Wow. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. We're okay.
Well, actually, all the stuff I was going through on city council, this is how I kind of got my voice to be heard.
Yeah.
So that's
well,
good.
you were. So when I first started, there was one person on council that was normal, politically speaking, and not that he was abnormal.
Oh, are you talking about Nick?
Yeah, Nick Ibera.
Yeah. He's great.
And he was like, I don't know how to describe. It's not like, oh, these are the people I agree with, so I think they're normal. But you can tell people they're just normal citizens versus those that are kind of part of this little machine, and they hang out with this. It's this cultural difference. Like, well, we're separate. We know what's going on. Just we'll trust the experts.
Yeah.
And Nick Ibera was one that he was just a guy who was a citizen that wasn't like, oh, I'm the smartest guy in the world or I know everything, but he just wanted to represent people and be a voice, and help people. That there was you, saw how well that went. Angela Romine was another example. Now she got recruited to try and unseat Lincoln Huff, who runs as a Republican, but he's a lefty, and came so incredibly close, remarkably close, given the amount of money and elitism that Lincoln had behind him. In fact, she came as close as she did, I think was, a tremendous thing. But you see how, particularly, after you and you see Angela, just like normal people. But point being is those people, like you and Angela and Nick, they were always more than like, come on and yeah, I'll talk about what's going on in the city. But city did not like that.
Oh,
at
yeah,
all.
yeah. Well, when you're an outsider, you're not really welcome in a group like that. So
And it was and we met because I was going to get there. There used to be off of Glenstone and Chestnut Expressway. There was that lot with all the food trucks, and then the city effed them all over.
That's right.
And so they all had to sit. Yeah, of course, as usual. Very the incredibly business friendly Springfield drove all those businesses off, and one of them was Chef Baldy. He was a pizza guy, and I had gone to get one of his pizzas, and he said, "Do you know Christy Folnecki?" I was like, "No, I don't." And he goes, "Well, she's getting ready to come pick up a pizza. You should meet her." And so anyway, that's how we met. It was how we met. And then it was like, oh yeah, and you're like, I'll come on the show. I thought finally somebody.
Well, yeah, because I'm like, I don't know why they don't like me that very much.
Yeah, no.
I don't know why I'm being targeted, but yeah, that's been great. I can't believe it's been 10 years ago, though. That's crazy. Time flies. It worked out okay. I'll tell you that much.
Yes.
Yes, it worked out great for me.
So far, so good.
That's right.
All right. So here is a snapshot of just how this would be Trump derangement syndrome. Okay, fall into that category. There was not only was this is in the style section of the New York Times.
This should be good.
Yeah, not only was this not a joke, not a parody. This was an actual question of concern that a fashion-conscious person sent in, but the New York Times thought it was relevant enough to print a response to it. So this was the question that was sent in. My style can be described as modern minimalist meets classic. I own several sheath dresses that fit and flatter. But when I put them on now, they echo what I see as MAGA style. How can I restyle them without sacrificing my aesthetic? Miriam Woodley from Island, Washington. This is...
What?
Yeah. So this is Trump derangement. Now, listen, there are a lot of people who are like, oh, if Trump derangement syndrome means that I don't like him because of this or that. No, listen. When you are worried,
that is so crazy.
When you put on clothes and you are so obsessed with someone that you worry that, like, that you're thinking about them when you dress, like, do I look like somebody that supports that? You have a problem.
It's called a personality disorder. Which
It is.
Yes, it totally is.
Oh, but if you read, I'm not going to go through it all,
I
but
mean,
the 1,
so
2, 3,
much
4,
drama.
5, 6, 8 paragraphs, I mean, some are just a couple sentences long, responding to it. And not like, hey, you know what, maybe you, one, shouldn't care so much about what other people think, but maybe you should seek help. You know, some sort of like a Dear Abby response. But instead, totally validating the concern and how essentially, you know, Trump is bad and here's ways you can potentially navigate around it. This is a mental illness that these people have.
I mean, and to look like MAGA, hello, it's called classy. Has anyone, I mean, as much as they've been railing on Melania, she looks incredible. I mean,
oh, of course.
And her
well,
clothes,
look at
you're
Christine Nome. You got all of these.
You're watching the style section. So, I mean, just it visually, if you look at the way that these women, especially women, because it happens to be a woman that's talking about looking like a MAGA person, dress. I mean, they look so good and so professional. And I mean, really, it's a shame that all of these fashion magazines have just totally gone off on Melania, and especially the last few months. I don't know what their obsession is with her.
If you don't,
she's so classy.
If you want to dress in a way that you feel confident, people will not confuse you with a supporter of Donald Trump. It is very simple. Just go to any trans parade and ask for fashion advice. Just look around. And
I'm telling you, this is kind of a strange topic, but I'm telling you, fashion has like gone out the window because when I take my kids to school and I see kids in pajamas, they think that we talk about this at the dinner table. I'm like, you are never, unless it's pajama day, you are not wearing pajamas to school.
They're called standard. It's called self-respect.
Well, and actually I was the career day. I spoke at career day at Nixit.
Nixit, who invited you?
Well, I think maybe my daughter volunteered me for it,
okay.
and then it was for it was in the junior high.
This may come as a surprise to you. This is not an event that I often get invited to at public schools.
Why not?
You should. No,
like I find there was a career day. Why didn't I know about it?
I think there was a form or something, and I wouldn't have known about it, but my daughter kept saying you need to fill this form out, and then she was really pushing it, so it was for whatever her class or something. But the first thing that I tried, it's funny that we're talking about this, but so there were a bunch of different classes, so I had to do my presentation multiple times, and so the thing that I talked about in the beginning was it's very important how you dress, because you know, especially attorneys, which I'm still kind of shocked sometimes what they wear, but that you're taught in law school that it's a sign of respect when you're in front of the judge, that you look nice and you present yourself. Plus, if clients are going to pay you, they don't want you to, you know, right. And so you could see the kids looking at me, and the girl in front of me had pajamas on. And it was just interesting because by the time I was done, I said, how many of you want to be attorneys? And the girl raised her hand, and I was like, well, maybe I said, it's important you guys start, you know, dressing nicely. I know at school, my kids wear sweatshirts and that kind of thing, but it's important. And that's why it's so great to see an administration that respects the American people and themselves enough to show up in a suit. And I mean, that's really, the imagery is important.
And there is consistent. The way that somebody presents themselves is generally consistent, even with work ethic and ability to talk to. Now, of course, you're going to have anomalies.
Yeah,
that's going to be the case. But you look, for example, we were talking off air, and there's like 1,000 Starbucks employees that are going to strike because Starbucks, you know, they have allowed for a while this creep of self-expression. It's gotten to the point where if you have some homeless, urine-soaked homeless person come into the store, it can be difficult to differentiate them between, you know, them and the barista, because they have allowed their employees, and obviously they're not all like this, but you get these extreme examples, these employees that have absolutely no desire to look presentable. They, in fact, think that somehow they're making a statement by not bathing and wearing just dirty clothes, and it's self-expression, whatever. And
well, they can go work somewhere else.
well, and so
Yeah,
Starbucks is
yeah.
like, hey, listen, and we're going to tighten things up a bit. And you would think that they were talking about stealing the firstborn children from these people. The way they act, that it is so clear that these people on the left in particular have no idea what a real struggle is, because to them this is a real struggle. Like, they're going on strike over this. Are you insane? Get another job if you don't like it. Get somewhere, or be homeless if you want. Go ahead, knock yourself out. But it's that mentality and that attitude that I'm the center of the universe, that narcissism, that privileged attitude, a spoiled brat. I should be able to do what I want. And that you can, when you see somebody that demands that they get to dress like some homeless slob as self-expression and everyone in the world should respect it, you can pretty much peg what their personality is going to be like.
And their parents failed them, because you do not succeed in the world by sending your kid out there and telling them they can wear pajamas to Starbucks at work.
And I understand. Fashions change. I get it. Styles change.
Yeah.
I know that. I mean, the way that a well-dressed man dresses today is different than it was you get on an airplane. Once upon a time, you dressed up to get on an airplane. People don't do it. Even respectable adults don't, to the degree that they did once upon a time. But there's still this sort of on the spectrum, I guess, if you will, these people that it's just clear they have no self-respect.
But
they
if
don't.
you're going to the workplace, that's a totally different thing. I mean, and still, when I fly to DC, I mean, everybody still wears suits in DC and New York. I mean, it's actually kind of in Manhattan. The financial district is not. People are not. There's not a lot of people there anymore, because I guess they're working from home or whatever. But at least in DC, people are still dressed up. And, I mean, that's just an important part of being an adult. And like we were just talking about, you mentioned about Starbucks off the air, and my daughter, I mean, it's so different from what you're talking about, because they just had the last day of school and sea trials and all this crazy stuff. And so then after I was telling you, they climbed Herndon, which is this big monument. It took a couple hours, the whole class. Well, after that, they are not plebes anymore, and they're basically second years, which is youngster. So they get to wear Navy. It has to still say Navy, but in their dorm room. So like she had to wear her uniform and all the Navy stuff,
Right.
her uniform everywhere. She had a square corners in her dorm. And so like the uniform and your presentation and stuff is just interesting. You mentioned Starbucks. So there's there's still hope for young people, because there's other kids that, are very disciplined with what they're doing.
And this stuff goes through cycles. And
Yeah,
it
but
does,
I
where
mean-
people have a level of self-respect and want to present themselves that way, and you get these people that think that it's this weird contradiction where they think the less respectable that they make themselves, the more they should be respected for it. It's like, that's not how this works.
I know, right? Yeah.
I mean, but they demand people react in a way that's not natural.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
really,
right, yeah.
as human beings, we just like, animals are the same way. That visual cues tell them something about others. I mean, that's what animals, much of what they do is, you got male birds are more colorful than female birds because they have to attract, I mean, there are visuals for a reason, and human beings are the same way. I mean, we are made that way. And so it's natural for people to have perceptions of others based off of how they look, how they take care of themselves. Yeah. And they just like somehow want you, they act like that's wrong. It's weirdly anti-science, the position they take on some of that stuff.
If you look at the cabinet, Trump's cabinet, it seems like that they all are doing their job when they're dressed up and they're coming to work in a suit, and they look professional, like.
Yeah,
they're actually like working.
It's much
today,
different than Biden had that energy person that worked in the energy department that was bald and wore lipstick and a dress.
That's my visual, I know.
Christy Filnacki with us, a traffic update. I'm Nick Reed. Chrissy Folnecki joining us. Did you just see the? It's weirdly, it was, I think, for a lot of people, proud to be an American moment when you see the reception that the president of the United States received in the Middle East. The fighter jets leading in Air Force One. You've got the military from Saudi Arabia that are leading this procession carrying American flags. I mean, you can't even get over in California when the dictator from China came. Gavin Newsom didn't even have people carrying American flags there. He had them waving Chinese flags. But over in and then the procession was at I think it was in Qatar. It was one of the countries, and they had those bulletproof. They were red wrapped. I think they were Teslas.
Electric vehicles.
Yeah, electric. Yeah. I mean, and it was just like, oh man.
Well, first the horses in I guess they were probably Arabian horses, but they're in front of Trump's car in Saudi Arabia, and just that visual, I thought that is so cool.
Yeah.
And he loved it. I mean, they seem like they have so much respect for each other, the Prince and Trump. And then is it Qatar or Qatar? I always mispronounce
it gets both ways.
Last night, everybody was pronouncing it differently. So, and then you saw all the camels, and that was so cool. And just the reception, it's just funny the way it shows.
Well, it's just, as a country, it is nice to see foreign leaders receive a president like that, as opposed to like what we found out about Biden, where different world leaders would get assigned to be the caretaker of the president.
Well, I know that's right.
I mean,
you can tell when people actually are respecting the president and respecting us. And it was interesting. I think it was the guy, I don't know what his title is for Qatar. Is he the president or whatever he is?
Jedi Knight.
But he made a comment like, "We're glad you're back in" or something. And he said something in his speech icon. I thought, that's interesting. They're probably like, I am so sick of dealing with Biden when I can't speak to him.
I love that. And so the left, of course, has to try to figure out a way to negate these positives and this visual proof that the United States is respected once again in the world. And they're like, what with
they're focused on that
Qatar.
plane.
Well, yeah, and they're like Qatar, like, oh well, Qatar. I mean, they gave Hamas a hideout. And I'm like, you people spent the post October 7th attack on Israel supporting the talking points of Hamas.
Oh yeah.
Every time Hamas claimed Israel killed this many people, you couldn't wait to regurgitate it. Everything Hamas did, and now all of a sudden, like, we're supposed to be enemies with Qatar because Hamas had a headquarters there. Oh, so now Hamas is the bad guy? Isn't that an amazing tournament?
Can fly down to El Salvador to see terrorists and gang members. Yeah,
it's just so it's so patently lazy.
To the Middle East has been amazing. I mean, that speech he gave in Saudi Arabia, I couldn't even believe it. I mean, the guy has so much courage. And the media they're so obsessed over this plane that
what else do they
Qatar gave to the United States?
Yeah, what else do they have? Well, and let me tell you how we know they're not genuine in their concern, because they continue to lie about it. They continue to try to make people think that it was a personal gift to Trump when it was not. It was to the Defense Department. I think it was Defense Department, Pentagon, and then whenever Trump is no longer president, we go to the Presidential Library, which is controlled by the Smithsonian. Yeah. It has no connection to Trump as a person, and the fact that Democrats keep trying to make people think that tells you they know that they're full of crap.
Well, and I still didn't understand everything so on Jesse Waters, he had a really good synopsis of what was going on, and Gingrich was on and said, that was a very good summary that you gave, and this is last night, about what Trump has been doing with Saudi Arabia and with Qatar. He said that, and it was something about, having Saudi Arabia pump more oil, and then, the whole thing. And then
all of this is strategic.
I know. And then he said that having Syria there, which that was amazing, that Syria was there during his meeting.
Them away from Russia.
Yes, and Iran.
And
yeah. And but he made so Gingrich made the point that it would have taken that, number one, most presidents would have not taken the risk of having the Syrian president there to do this, because it is a big risk. And number two, if they did, they would have studied it for years before they even did. And he said, I would think that Trump probably decided in a day to do this. I mean, that's just what it.
Yeah, he reads people. I mean,
yeah, and a business owner has to take risk every day, and then it's just amazing. And I mean, talk about historic to have all of these people there in this pageantry and all of this going on, and United States is respected, and then the media is just like,
well, of course.
But I mean, it is so amazing everything he's doing.
That we have a president, and he's able to come back, and we don't have to read stories about the fact that he may have pooped his pants. That. Which is literally something that happened with one of the foreign visits of Biden.
Between India and Pakistan.
Oh, well, you're nitpicking now. It probably would have stopped on its own. Chrissy Fulnecki, thank you as always. Great pleasure to have you here. We got a traffic update. I'm Nick Reed. Author of the Week coming up in the next hour, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glen. So tomorrow morning we will kick off Friday morning at Scramblers, sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My throat, it just keeps. But you know what?
What?
The wife is sick.
Don't
And it
be
started
bringing
with.
negative over here, bud.
Started with a throat thing. And, now that I think about it, she said it kind of feels like my throat's closing up. And that's what it keeps feeling like. With me, and like the day before, she's like, I haven't been sick in 2 years, and then now she was like bedridden. So I don't know. Maybe I'm getting a little bit of what she had.
Hopefully not.
That's what I hope too. I'll fight through it. I'm a fighter. I wanted to read to you a post on Ozarks Elder Law, which you can, if you go to Facebook Ozarks Elder Law, you can find this plus a link on how you can move forward on it. But I thought it was just a great posting of theirs. And they posted, the state does not care that you promised Dad his farm would stay in the family. Without proper planning, it's just another asset on the auction block. And it's true. Family treasures, lifetime savings, cherished homes disappear every day because good intentions never make it onto paper. But there is a better way. Families who plan ahead preserve 60% more of their assets on average. That's huge. Smart families aren't leaving things to chance. They're creating clear roadmaps that honor their life's work and prevent disputes before they start. And then they have a link that you can click for a free 1-hour estate planning consultation where they will help you make a plan that protects what matters most for your generations to come. But I just thought that opening line was really, I don't know, it just really hit. The state doesn't care that you promised Dad his farm would stay in the family, and that's so true. They do not care, and that's why you gotta really make plans for that stuff. Ozarks Elder Law, you all know Lori Rook. You have for some time. Of course, that's, her outfit there, and she's got such an incredible team and numerous different locations throughout the area. You can learn more about all of them at ozarkselderlaw.com. We have Author of the Week coming up here in just a bit. In fact, I'll give you just a little preview. Jason Riley is the author. He's a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute and a columnist for the Wall Street Journal. He is also a black man. Why does that matter, you say? Well, the book is The Affirmative Action Myth, Why Blacks Don't Need Racial Preferences to Succeed. And, of course, like all our Author of the Weeks, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, so we'll have him in just a couple of moments. Now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 87. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 59. For your Friday, a slight chance for scattered showers in the afternoon, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 85. And looking ahead to Saturday, sunny with a high near 82. And Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air, not only do they specialize in all of your HVAC needs, but they also specialize in indoor air quality testing. And this is really great if you are a person who is prone to allergies. For indoor air quality testing, the Foreman team, they do a very thorough inspection and they can help identify what is causing that buildup. And then they can help reduce those allergens, get you breathing a little easier this spring. Also, the next couple of days are going to be pretty warm. And if your AC is not up to par, the Foreman team, they can do an AC tune-up or they can get you scheduled for your annual routine maintenance if you want to go ahead and get ahead of that curve. So for all of those AC needs, indoor air quality testing needs, Foreman Mechanical are the go-to guys. Now you can schedule them out to your home today, and you can find all of that contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
And it's time for Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. Great folks there, just south of Kearney Street. Our author today, Jason Riley, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, columnist for the Wall Street Journal, and his book is The Affirmative Action Myth, Why Blacks Don't Need Racial Preference to Succeed. Jason Riley, thank you for being with us. Appreciate it greatly. And I know I mentioned you being the fellow Manhattan Institute and columnist of the Wall Street Journal, but just if you would, give everyone a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm a journalist by training. I've been writing for the Wall Street Journal for more than 30 years now, and so that's my background. And in addition to that, I write books and do a lot of public speaking. And this is my most recent book. But most of my books are about topics I cover in my column. Urban affairs, I write a lot about education and crime and income inequality, immigration, that sort of thing. And so the books come out of those columns.
Well, let's talk about, affirmative action. And I think that, unfortunately, a lot of people in this country probably believe that until affirmative action came along, the system was set up in a way that made it impossible for people of color to succeed. And affirmative action was a way of basically giving equal opportunity to people that otherwise did not have it. And so prior to affirmative action, because of that system, people of specifically black people in this country fell way behind in terms of every category of significance compared to white people. And it wasn't until affirmative action gave them the ability to have equal access to these opportunities that they finally were able to catch up. And I think that's probably what a lot of people think is reality. However, of course, much of what your book explains is that's not necessarily the case.
Was in place that made it more difficult for minorities to move ahead. But that system, however, did not in fact prevent blacks from moving ahead well before we had policies such as affirmative action in place starting in the late 60s and early 70s. So, for example, the black poverty rate fell from 87% in 1940 to 47% in 1960. Over a 20-year period, a 40 percentage point drop in black poverty. By 1960, most black families were out of poverty. Black people, climbed out of poverty on their own, not due to affirmative action policies, which wouldn't be put in place until the late 60s and early 70s. And yet, affirmative action is credited with lifting black people into the middle class and lifting them out of poverty. So the track record is very different. The data shows a very different narrative than the one that is out there that you just described.
What do you think the driving force behind that original concept of affirmative action was? Was it something cynical, or was it something that the people pushing it felt was really needed? And then once it became clear through results that it wasn't doing what it was argued to be intended to do, why the continued push?
Well, we're changing for the better. Slower in the South than in the North, but they were changing throughout the country. And I think that the initial effort of affirmative action was to reach out to groups that had traditionally been overlooked, whether it was in terms of hiring or in terms of admission to college, and help those groups come up to existing standards at the time. What it became, though, over the decades is an effort to lower standards for certain racial and ethnic groups. And that's what affirmative action has meant in practice since at least the early 1970s. And the problem is that that form of affirmative action is not only hugely divisive in a nation as ethnically and racially diverse as ours, it's also unconstitutional, as we heard from the Supreme Court back in 2023 when they banned race-based admissions in college. And the point of my book is that in addition to those two things, it simply has not worked. It has not helped to lift the black poor out of poverty. To the extent that affirmative action has been successful, it has helped already well-off black people become better off. And that's why you heard so much apocalyptic talk around the 2023 Supreme Court decision from black elites who were complaining about this decision not going their way. They said, oh my goodness, these policies created the black middle class. Without them, black people won't be able to move ahead in America. Campuses will be whitewashed and on and on and on. And I said, no, that's not true. There was a significant black middle class in this country well before affirmative action. It has continued to grow, but at a much slower rate than it was growing in the decades prior to affirmative action. If anything, these policies have throttled black upward mobility. They have not been the basis for it.
Well, that leads to my next question. Our author of the week, Jason Riley, the book The Affirmative Action Myth. I think a lot of people may believe that, well, affirmative action, it's probably not the best thing in the world, but it doesn't do any harm. What harm does it do? It can only help or do nothing at all. Does it, in fact, you just talked about how we saw see the throttling of it, the deterioration of the successes at the same time as affirmative action. So is affirmative action responsible for that, or does it just sort of occur at the same time?
Well, it's also harmed the group that's intended to help. And we have evidence of this because even before the Supreme Court ruling in 2023, a bunch of states, 9 or 10 states, had passed their own bans on race-based college admissions. Out in California, big, diverse states. California had done it, Texas, Florida, Arizona. And so we had a sort of natural experiment out there as to what would happen. So after California passed its ban back in the mid-90s, college black enrollment at the most selective schools in the UC system, so UCLA and Berkeley, it fell. Black enrollment fell, Hispanic enrollment fell at those schools. But throughout the whole University of California system, after affirmative action was banned, black college enrollment increased. So at UC Santa Barbara, UC Santa Cruz, and so forth, kids were going to schools where they could handle the work. They were graduating with higher GPAs, and they were graduating at much, much higher rates, including in the more difficult disciplines, the STEM fields, math, engineering, computer science, and so forth. So a policy that had been put in place to increase the ranks of the black middle class had in practice, we know from the California experience, resulted in fewer black lawyers and doctors and engineers and physicists than we would have had in the absence of the policy. So what affirmative action has done in higher education in particular is to mismatch kids with schools over the past 50 years. So Asian kids and white kids tend to go to schools where they meet the standards of the average student at that school. But black kids are funneled into these selective colleges where they're in over their head. They're not academically prepared to do the work, and they struggle. They pool at the bottom of the class, they're dropping out at higher rates, they're switching to easier majors, and this mismatch effect between the student and the school has had very, very negative consequences for blacks in this country, and it's one of the reasons I'm glad that these policies are going to go away.
We are talking with the author of the week, Jason Riley, the book, The Affirmative Action Myth, Why Blacks Don't Need Racial Preferences to Succeed. Affirmative action was a term that anytime there were discussions about race in education or the workplace, that was synonymous with those conversations. They always were part of it. In modern era, you hear less of that term, more about equity, critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion. Now, to me, it seems as if it is I don't know, an evolved or enhanced version of, and perhaps even more damaging than affirmative action, arguing that, of course, because of people's skin color, they should be treated differently. Is there a relation between the ideology that promoted affirmative action and what we see today in CRT and DEI?
Oh, the equity and inclusion, critical race theory, the common thread through all of those things is an aversion to the principle of colorblindness. That is what the proponents want to avoid. And that's why I think they're going to continue to fight for these policies, even though the Supreme Court has ruled the way it ruled in 2023. They're opposed to colorblindness, and I think they're going to keep up the fight. Just the way, by the way, the Southern segregationists did after the Brown v. Board of Education ruling. They didn't throw up their hands and go, oh, we lost. We're going to allow desegregation now. They continue to fight colorblind policymaking. And I think the progressives today pushing DEI are just as opposed to colorblind policies as those Southern segregationists, and they're going to continue to fight. And so you're going to need follow-up lawsuits. You're going to need follow-up litigation. You're going to need follow-up threats, and they're going to watchdogs keeping an eye on these schools and making sure they're not doing end runs around the Supreme Court ruling. That will all be necessary, because I don't think they're going to give up without a fight.
We have a lot of parents and grandparents listening, and oftentimes I think they don't know how to tackle the discussion with their kids or grandkids that come home from school, and they're told, well, colorblindness is racism. That is proof of racism because it's white privilege, and we need to be the opposite of colorblind. We have to, in order to fully appreciate and understand others, we have to know, quote, their story, and that involves their color. And I think for a lot of parents and grandparents that they don't even really know how to respond because it's such a weird and counterintuitive concept. What would your advice be to them in terms of how to approach that sort of conversation?
Well,
what would you say? Well, what would you say?
The policy goal was colorblindness. They've advanced at a much faster rate. When the policy goal has been colorblindness, then they have advanced under affirmative action. Just to give you another example in the field of education, I cite a scholar at Harvard, Robert Putnam, who put out a book a couple of years ago about black college completion rate. And it turns out that in the 40s and 50s and 60s, the black-white gap in college completion had been narrowing. Black people were catching up on white people when it came to higher education. But around 1970, so right around the start of affirmative action, black college completion rates stalled. And they are today right about where they were in 1970, after 50 years of affirmative action. So that tells you how blacks advance in the absence of these policies versus how they advance under affirmative action policies. And I just say compare and contrast. Look at the track record. Look at the data. And you will get a very different story than what you're hearing from the people out there in the sort of civil rights industrial complex, as I like to call it, who are pitching a very, very different narrative.
Any final thoughts for folks today?
I hope you take a look at the book and let me know what you think about it. I mean, I'm trying to make a sober argument based on data, based on evidence, based on reporting, logic, reason. It's an emotional topic, but I try to bring more light than heat to the discussion. So pick up a copy and see what you think.
Thank you for your time this morning, sir. Appreciate it greatly.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Jason Riley, our author of the week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. The book, again, you can get at ABC Books, along with our past author of the week books, of course, and it is titled The Affirmative Action Myth, Why Blacks Don't Need Racial Preferences to Succeed. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Well, of course, what goes hand in hand with a home loan is a home. You need a realtor. Now, I think we've gotten away from this trend of people thinking, well, I'll just sell my house myself. A few years ago, a lot of people were doing that because you couldn't even get the sign in the yard, and you had 4 different offers over your asking price. And so people would think, well, heck, why am I going to pay realtor a commission when I can just easily do this myself, even after paying commission? After paying commission, people who use a realtor get more back when they sell their home than people who try it on their own. And in particular, when you have somebody like Emily Johnson on your side. Because trust me, odds are the person on the other end, they do have a realtor who knows what's going on, and they're going to make sure that they take care of their person. If you don't have someone taking care of you, that's why it is that even after paying those commissions, people who use a realtor come out ahead. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, whether you're buying or selling, she is without question your go-to in the area. You can find all of her information at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 87. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 59. For your Friday, a slight chance for scattered showers in the afternoon, otherwise mostly sunny with a high near 85. And on Saturday, sunny with a high near 82.
So Trump has for some time noted the prices of eggs coming down. This was an item that Democrats were really hanging their hat on. Like, look at prices of eggs. Yeah. You were sworn in 20 minutes ago and the prices of eggs haven't dropped. He lied. Because this is the level of intellect that we get from Trump opposers. And it wasn't long after Trump got elected president that the prices did start to come down. Now, some of that was going to be occurring anyhow because of the nature of the chicken holocaust executed under the Biden administration and because of the fears of bird flu. There were like 1 million chickens that were slaughtered. And when that happens, they're the ones that poop out the eggs. And so you have a lot less eggs, and you have less eggs, then you have, supply and demand, the prices go up. And it takes a while for new chickens to be ready to have the eggs and then to have eggs at the level that can then be distributed and get back in the marketplace. So inevitably, because of supply and demand, those prices were going to come down anyhow. You couple it with the overall inflation coming down because of the either implemented or expected economic policies of Trump, and then you get the lowering of prices. And so Trump knew this, obviously. I mean, it's just common sense. And so the media, of course, they just they can't help themselves. And so while Trump is noting, among other things, that price of eggs are coming down, the media is trying to claim that they're not. And by that, what would happen is you wouldn't have news stories about it, but you would have these news outlets allowing people to falsely claim it. So you'll have CNN or NBC or CBS or whatever, and they're interviewing some Democrat about Trump policies, and then that person will say, and egg prices are going up, and it wasn't true, but they wouldn't be corrected. So these outlets would allow their networks to be used to falsely claim that egg prices were going up or they weren't going down, when in fact they were. And people, of course, knew this because people shop. It would crack me up, and perhaps you saw this as well, I saw it, that when prices had gone down pretty significantly on eggs, there would be some people on the left that would post these little things claiming that egg prices were still much higher than they were. And my first thought was, this is someone who clearly does not buy eggs. They obviously do not buy eggs, because if they bought eggs, they would know that the prices have gone down from when they were like $9 for a dozen. Finally, the networks are having to get around to admit that prices are coming down and have been coming down under Donald Trump. PJ Media has a story noting, though, I love this headline, CNN finds the weirdest way to spin lower egg prices to make Donald Trump look bad. And so here is part of, this is the headline. Quote, this is CNN. Trump's egg price fiction has suddenly become reality. So they've got to put, that, Trump, but he's still a liar, see, even though they've come down when he said they're, but, when he was saying it, it's fiction, even though it's not. Goldman, the reporter David Goldman writes, for months, President Trump has falsely claimed that egg prices are tumbling. It wasn't true then, but it is true now. Egg prices fell 12.7% last month, the biggest monthly decline since 1984. I mean, just you could play the game the media does. I would love for the Trump administration to note that, just to spin it this way, Trump has lowered egg prices to a degree that hasn't been seen since 1984. Because technically that is true. Egg prices fell 12.7% last month, the biggest monthly decline since 1984, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported Tuesday, and they could continue to fall this month too. The USDA reported last week that a dozen large white shell eggs now cost $3.30 on average, down a whopping 69 cents from just a week before. It's a remarkable reversal after egg prices surged in each of the past 5 months and 17 of the past 19 because of a deadly avian flu epidemic that necessitated the mass culling of egg-laying hens. Goldman concludes the article. So, Trump's claim that consumer egg prices are down is finally true, even if the timing of his claim and the wild percentages he threw around were grossly inaccurate. Now, of course, this is part of the Trump derangement syndrome, and that is you cannot write a story without figuring out a way to make Donald Trump look bad. And this is the instinct of people that get paid to be reporters today. Egg prices are coming down. Well, gosh, that's going to make Trump look good, maybe. People might think it's because of Trump. people might think that Trump was telling the truth. Well, now we have to make sure that's not true. So let's put in this story here that even though they are coming down, now Trump, it's just a coincidence that they were coming down when Trump was saying, because Trump is lying about it. See, he was spreading all this disinformation, and the fact that it actually turned out to be true, that's just a coincidence. And that becomes the theme of the story. It's derangement. These people are deranged. There's a story that Carissa Codell had over at Ozarks First back on May 12th. So this was, I think, Sunday. Is that Sunday? Anyhow, I'd pulled this story because I wanted to play it for you and then talk about it a little bit. And I just every day it kept getting pushed off. But anyhow, I want to play it for you now. And it has to do, some of you may have seen the story. And then, of course, I know we had it here as well. But we hadn't talked about it. It was about business owners in the downtown area voicing concern because of crime down there. And so here is the story. This isn't the story that we aired here on our news, but this is the original story that aired on Color 10, Fox 49.
A downtown Springfield business owner frustrated after his business has been broken into several times in the past year. Carissa Codell spoke to him and obtained crime statistics from police. She's live in Springfield tonight.
Yeah, I asked Springfield police for property crime data within downtown, and it shows that within a year there have been 160 reports of vandalism. Now, that does include homes and businesses. The business owner I spoke to says, unfortunately, break-ins are common.
That's one of many times, but yeah, this time they straight just busted through my window.
The outside window of Jamie's shoes on College Street in downtown Springfield is now covered up after two men were seen on video breaking the glass to steal a pair of shoes.
They had no plans to even break in. They just kind of did it on the spot.
But owner Jamie Logan tells me he doesn't plan on pressing charges.
If I pressed charges and took him to court, it would have cost way more money than the pair of shoes that he took. They were cool because they were from the 90s and you don't ever see them, but I'm not taking someone to court over that.
Springfield police tell me property damage in the downtown area is common.
Yeah, we do get a lot of those reports.
But Lieutenant Kurt Ringgold tells me property crimes in downtown have not increased in the past year. Do you know if this past year has been higher than other years?
I wouldn't think so. No, I think we were right on the norm.
Logan has owned his business for less than a year and tells me he's been broken into somewhere between 5 to 10 times.
I go to bed at night paranoid. Is my going to get broken literally every single night?
He says other business owners downtown have reached out to him, saying their stores were also randomly broken into.
Do we have some things down there? Yeah, absolutely. But we're on top of those things, and we try to squash those things before they become big things.
So they're patrolling and stuff. I see them down here all the time. You'd think that that'd be good.
Despite the property damage, both Ringgold and Logan agree downtown has more ups than downs.
I don't think it's that, unsafe down there at all.
Downtown's not all bad, especially in the daytime. It's good.
And Springfield police do have officers assigned specifically for downtown here, and they say the best way to prevent crime, if you see anything suspicious, please report it, even if you think it's minor. Reporting live in Springfield, I'm Carissa Codell, Ozarks First.
All right, so again, that aired a few days ago. I don't know whether some of these numbers are surprising to folks or not. Now, and I'm not sure if this was referenced in that story, but ultimately on ozarksfirst.com, they noted that according to Springfield police records, there have been 160 vandalism reports in the past year, which that includes some of the homes in the downtown area and businesses as well. Now, those are the ones that get reported. I think we can, that the business owner, this business owner in particular, it's a shoe store. And he, I think 5 to 10 times this year and over the past year, he has had his store broken into. And he's like, well, I'm not going to press charges. Like, it's just not worth it. Now, I think that attitude is probably pretty common in the area, which tells me that the number of reports is well below the number of actual crimes that gets committed, because this is unfortunately what happens in any area, culturally speaking, in which criminal activity becomes somewhat of the norm. People just learn to live with it. The standard of living is lowered, and people just think, what's the point? Nothing, what difference does it make? And they find that it's just easier to live with the criminals and to live with the criminal activity than to bother even reporting it. And I think that increasingly Springfield is becoming that way, which is a horrific reflection of Springfield. But listen, I mean, Springfield is run by left-wing individuals. We are a city that mimics in many ways St. Louis, Kansas City, Columbia. And so we're going to go down the exact same path. I mean, when you carry out behaviors and govern in the same way that left-wing, that any other cities do with failed outcomes, then you're going to end up with the same failed outcomes. You're not going to magically have some other sort of outcome. Now, I think that if a person listens to that story or views that story, it can easily seem as if the police are being dismissive of that, where the officer is like, well, no, I mean, we stay on top of it, and I think it's probably pretty much in line with normal, and it seems dismissive. But this is the thing that a lot of people don't understand. Overall, police don't stop crimes. And the reason that there is a misunderstanding regarding this is because so often when we talk about crime, we talk about number of police, or we talk to police. It's prosecutors that should be, I would love to see a shift in this country whenever there were discussions about crimes, that we didn't immediately look at, well, how many people get arrested? How many police officers? And I'm not saying that isn't an important component, but these people, when you end up in a culture where criminals are more prolific and they are, more brazen, it's not because they aren't afraid of getting arrested. It's because they don't worry about the consequences of getting arrested. Being arrested is so what? They don't fear the punishment. Whatever the potential punishment may be is something that to them it's worth it. So what? Whether that is constantly being let back out, whether that is, you serve just a little bit of time, or maybe you have a fine, or, they'll plead it down because we don't really want to hassle with, do we really want to clog up the court system because of some stolen shoes? So let's plead the guy down. And so the real problem here, I believe, and it would be in line with the problem in every blue area of this country that are oftentimes run, and I'm not saying we got Soros paid prosecutors here, but we're sort of getting to the point where criminals, they don't fear the punishment. You have the business owner in this particular story noting that, he says it's not a police presence issue. I see it all the time. I suspect you could quadruple the police presence down there, and it wouldn't make much of a difference when it comes to the issue of crime. Because they're not afraid of the police. Because the thing that the police do to them is not the punishment. The punishment comes with if they end up having to serve any sort of time or face any sort of police don't do the punishing, and it's the lack of punishment that is causing this criminal element to feel unafraid. This particular instance that was highlighted in this story sounds as if, at least it was believed, that this wasn't even a planned thing, that these are two guys that were walking by and they saw shoes that they wanted, so they broke through the storefront window and took them. There is so little fear of any sort of repercussion that crime is becoming casual. That's like casual. These were individuals that apparently they didn't even set out. It wasn't pre-planned. There wasn't any, all right, what are we going to do because we're afraid we'll get caught? They just did it spur of the moment. When you have casual crime being committed, that is a sign that criminals are unafraid and they are unworried about any sort of punishment. Now, we could talk all day long about, the reasons that is the scenario. In some areas of the country, you have left-wing prosecutors that feel, locking up criminals is only going to make things worse, and that punishing them is wrong because they are victims of society. You may have overcrowding situations in which it's like, hey, if we lock them up, then we got to let a rapist out. So I'm not here to assign the reason in this particular area per this discussion that criminals are not fearing any sort of punishment. I'm just telling you that that's what's leading to this. And I think it's sad that Springfield has allowed itself to get to the point that you can tell these people that own these businesses, live in the area, they're just like, this is just the way it is in Springfield. And it of course, it's no revelation that I have disagreements with the leading of Springfield in a left-wing way. But you would think there would be someone. I mean, we just had a outgoing Mayor McCheese, and just all the wonderful, looking back at all these wonderful things and so forth. Meanwhile, you have what clearly is a demonstration downtown that crime has gotten so bad that, one, criminals are not afraid to commit crime down there, and two, the people have just resigned to it. It's like, I'm not even going to bother. Why press charges? Not worth it. Happens all the time. Once a month or so, get broken into. All these area businesses do. That's sad. And the leadership of Springfield should be ashamed of that. That is how poorly things have culturally degraded themselves here in the city of Springfield. And I'm not saying it's an easy fix, don't get me wrong. But I don't know about you, it sure doesn't seem as if there's any real overt attempt by the city to say, you know what, this is unacceptable. When the citizens and business owners in our city just shrug their shoulders and basically say this is just how it is in Springfield, that's unacceptable. We don't hear that coming out of this city. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. The Pyramid Roofing Company. Should I file a claim? Should I wait to file? Insurance, it can be pretty stressful, confusing, especially if you don't deal with it all the time. But you know who does? Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. That's who. Now, the Pyramid team, they really do understand that getting a new roof is not a fun ordeal, which is why they focus on making that entire roofing process as simple as possible for you. And that includes working with you through that insurance process. And they don't make you sign anything during that time, which not all roofing companies do that, by the way. The Pyramid team, they also offer free roof inspections, and they also offer discounts for our military and our first responders on new roof installs. So if it is time to have the Pyramid Roofing Company team out to your home, whether you need a whole new roof or just a simple roof repair, give Josh a call and schedule that appointment today. Now, you can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Some of you may recall a few weeks ago there was some news coverage of one of the ICE detention centers in which the poor victimized Trans de Aragua gangbangers had spelled out SOS. And of course, CNN, all the networks. I mean, this is just how horrible the conditions are. This is what Democrats are fighting in order to correct. And I noted at the time that this is something they know to do. They know what to claim. They know claim abuse, claim. This was something that was revealed during the Biden administration, that when you came into contact with ICE, make these certain claims, and the media will be sympathetic towards you. They'll present you as a sympathetic figure. And so it was, if you know this truth, it's laughable that here they put SOS. But the media, oh, look at this. Look how horrible these conditions are. Well, those same people have barricaded themselves into the facility and are threatening to take hostages. Members of the gang threatening to hold ICE officers captive and threatening injury as they barricaded the doors of their unit with their cots, covered surveillance cameras, blocked windows, flooded it by clogging toilets, according to Department of Homeland Security. This was back at the end of April. Now, when this sort of a scenario arises, I would, without question, welcome elected Democrats to make their way on down and have that little meet and greet they so desperately want with these gang members. Glenn Beck's coming up next. See you at Scramblers tomorrow. I'm Nick Reed.